What's up, guys? In media, I'm joined by Kendall. We're giving you guys some more NBA draft grades. Here, we're going to be doing the Pacific Division, the Western Conference. Kendall, the Warriors started things off at number 2 in this division, and they obviously had a very tumultuous day. They had the injury to Klay Thompson. We didn't know severity on the day of the draft. We didn't learn it's a torn Achilles, so he's done for the year. So that's obviously a devastating blow to the Warriors. When it came to their draft picks, they started at number 2. They picked James Wiseman. At 48, they went with Nico Mannion, and then they also drafted Justinian Jessup at 51. When it came to a grade for the Warriors here, I went A-. I thought this was a pretty good job by the Golden State Warriors, given, of course, the tough circumstances regarding Klay Thompson. You know, James Wiseman, number 1 player on my board, so him going number 2, I mean, I guess super value, so I think that's great. And I also think that he made the most sense as the best fit. The one thing the Warriors haven't had during their championship run was a dynamic center. And to me, that's what Wiseman is. I think that the concerns about drafting a center high, I don't really hold that with him, because I think that he has one, elite athleticism that will allow him to be a very dangerous threat in the pick and roll game. And he has an evolving skill game, whether it be face up, whether it be even some stretchability that he's still working on. I think he's going to fit fine in the NBA as a modern-day big. You can't teach his size. You cannot teach his athleticism and feel for the game. So I love that pick. And at 48, Steve Kerr getting a fellow Arizona Wildcat and Nico Mannion. They definitely needed depth at point guard. Mannion, to some people, was a first-round pick. I'm fine with him dropping the second round. I certainly had other guards ahead of him. But I think that, getting him at 48, I think is really good value. So I like what the Warriors did. I thought they had a really good draft, so I'm going A-.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go with an A with the Warriors. Obviously it's not hard to get a great grade when you're drafting number 2. Just don't mess it up. They didn't do that with James Wiseman. Obviously, look, drafting a center is not ideal in today's NBA in the top 1, 2, or 3, but the Warriors, that is their position of need, and he was one of, if not the best player available. But to me, the only other guy you consider in that spot is Denny Avdia, who obviously fell all the way to 9. So clearly other teams maybe agreed that Wiseman should have been the pick there. So, but no, you get Wiseman, and this is the best spot for James Wiseman, particularly. This is the spot where I think his upside will be reached if he's able to stay healthy, because now he's playing with a point guard that's obviously better than any point guard he's ever played with. No disrespect to Alex Lomax, but he's not Steph Curry. And obviously, just in general, playing with a guard that can get him, obviously can throw him lobs. He's going to be getting single coverage. This would be an easy spot for Wiseman. And I agree, Nico Mannion, I think, was a very good pick here. I think he was a first round talent. I see why he dropped, but if you would have told the Warriors 12 months ago that they were going to end up with Mannion and Wiseman, they would have asked, well, what went wrong, man? Steph all right? Because how did we get both of these guys? Mannion, people thought would be a lottery pick at one point, especially after the performances he had in the All-Star games last year, the Hoop Summit and the McDonald's game. And Jessup's actually an interesting prospect out of Boise. The kid is a absolute sniper. Kind of upset that he's a stash guy, because after losing Klay Thompson, you may need the shooting at the wing spot. And, he already signed with the Illawarra Hawks in the NBL, but he's one of the best shooters in this draft. I probably would have went with Sam Merrill, but Jessup is more of a Warriors type of player than even Sam Merrill. Sam Merrill kind of needs the ball in his hands a little bit, whereas Jessup is your Duncan Robinson-esque kind of shooter. So we'll see. I mean, maybe they can do something to work something out to where he can get on the roster, but if not, then even long term, he fits their system. So I go there.
It'll be interesting to see how those guys end up fitting with Kelly Oubre, who's now going to be joining the fold. He was acquired in the trade as well. So the Warriors going to be an interesting team. Shout out to Klay Thompson. We hope he gets we hope he heals and gets back to 100%, because he's one of my favorite players to watch in this league. Terrible to see him go down with another severe injury. Let's head to the Suns. They picked number 10. That was the only pick they had. They went with Jalen Smith, the big man from Maryland. I gave them a C+. Now,
wow.
Look, here's what I'll say. I know that surprised you because you know how much I love Jalen Smith, and I will actually give some credit to James Jones, because, man, never look at the mock drafts when trying to figure out what they're going to do, because they do their own thing. They pick players they like. They don't. And to be fair, I gave them a lot of praise for their pick last year. Cameron Johnson, a guy I liked, even though the fit and trading down, a lot of people thought it was a little crazy. That turned out to be the right decision. Here, same thing. They went with just the guy they wanted, not what the mock draft said. They went with Jalen Smith. Here's the thing. I like Jalen Smith, and I think that he'll actually contribute for the Suns. I guess the only reason why I went C+ was because, to me, I just feel like with Ayton garnering so much time at the 5, Smith can play the 4. He's that skilled. But I mean, to me, you're drafting a top 10 guy. You want that guy to be a guy who, if he's not going to be playing 30, 35 minutes a night in year 1, you project him to be that guy. I don't see a future that has Ayton and Smith in the front court full time. I mean, maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. Again, he is one of my sleepers coming into the draft, and he is a fave I have in the first round. But to me, for Jalen Smith, I would have loved him to be on a better team. I mean, the time he plays, he's gonna get great looks playing with Chris Paul and Devin Booker. But for me, I would have preferred Tyrese Haliburton here. I think that was a guy we talked about on the Suns video we did a couple of weeks ago. And while, yes, Chris Paul occupies that one spot, I think that Haliburton and Paul could have had a similar relationship and similar symbiotic, threat like we saw from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chris Paul. And you could have had lineups where you had Devin Booker at the 3. So I thought that was a missed opportunity. So that's why I went with a C+. I like the player. The fit was a little weird.
Yeah. For me, it's tough. I'm going to go C- here. One of the lower grades I've given so far. I feel like Jalen Smith, not a terrible player. I think actually, like you said, may end up being a fairly decent player for the Phoenix Suns. I think they may feel like he could play in a too big system with DeAndre Ayton, but to me, as of right now, he's a backup big. That 10 spot, I would have traded down if you were really intrigued about a guy like Jalen Smith. But I just feel like, you said, the point guard position was the position we need for the Phoenix Suns. Not necessarily in the interim, but in the long term, where is that position? Because they gave up Ty Jerome and Jalen LeCue for Chris Paul. Obviously, Ricky Rubio is no longer there. I mean, Cam Payne is not the point guard of the future. So they really need depth in the backcourt. And this is a draft that was deep at the point guard position, not necessarily the big spot. And all the point guards that were there. I mean, you talked about Haliburton. He's the obvious guy. In our video, we talked about how he didn't seem like he was a guy that would even be there at 10. And you had to hope and pray he would fall to 10, and he did, and they passed on him. I was shocked. I thought that was his absolute floor. That's why the Sacramento Kings were also shocked, which we'll talk about as well. But Haliburton, Cole Anthony, who maybe people thought would have been a reach, but finding out he goes 15, and maybe it's not as crazy as people thought. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't think either one of those guys a perfect understudy for Chris Paul or to Chris Paul, but I mean, Jalen Smith isn't a scrub. He'll be fine, but at bigs nowadays, I feel like they're kind of, you can dime a dozen. You can find them anywhere, but I don't know. I also thought the Cam Johnson pick was pretty much a C-. So James Jones will likely prove me wrong again because he's clearly a very good talent evaluator.
Let's go to the Sacramento Kings, who you just mentioned. They picked at 12. They took Tyrese Haliburton. They also made a trade and picked up the 40th pick that ended up being Robert Woodard and a future second, and then Jamias Ramsey with the 43rd pick. I gave the Kings a B. Pretty good draft. I think that Haliburton falling into their lap was great in terms of value. I said it on draft night, and I'm still kind of juxtaposing with it. Like, the fit with Haliburton, I need someone to really explain that to me. Maybe you will. I don't know what your grade will be. But him and Fox, is he the starting two? Are you moving Buddy Hield still to the bench, or is he a backup point, and is he given some time? I guess if someone can give me a quick picture of how him and Fox work, maybe the grade goes higher. I just feel like the value is outstanding because he could end up being a starting point guard in the NBA. That's not what the Kings need. I think they needed backcourt depth, which is why I was looking at players like Kyrie Lewis and guys like that. But those were guys that I considered to be maybe guys who could be, bench players. I think Haliburton is a guy who absolutely should be the guy with the ball in his hands and creating for other guys. And that's just not going to really be his role in this team. He's going to be asked to be a spot-up shooter, which he can do, but I don't know if his services are going to be best used on this team. I thought the Woodard pick was pretty good because they need some more defense on the perimeter, more athleticism. So that made a lot of sense. And then I like Jemias Ramsey. The guy is a pit bull. The guy has some deep range. So taking a flyer on a young guy like that, I was cool with. But the Haliburton pick, all these picks were fine. I just the fit with Haliburton was a little weird for me. That's why I could only go high as a B.
Yeah, you know me. I'm not a huge fan of Tyrese Haliburton really in this draft, but I have to give him an A minus. The value is like you mentioned, it's terrific. People thought that this guy could be a top 5 guy. Apparently, some people thought he was the number 1 player in the draft, but we won't talk about that. But regardless, he's getting him at 12 is still a tremendous value. And we talk about the fit. I mean, we talked about in our War Room video that there had been talk about maybe Kyrie Lewis ending up in Sacramento. And this is actually a much better fit with De'Aaron Fox than Kyrie Lewis was. Kyrie Lewis was kind of just, a worse version of De'Aaron Fox. It would have given you a lot of speed, but the fit, Kyrie Lewis isn't the guy that can really play off the ball. Neither is Fox. Halliburton, on the other hand, is probably better off playing off the ball and being more of a secondary ball handler, playmaker type of guy. Because he obviously can shoot the basketball, but he's also great in transition with the ball in his hands. He can defend. You have length and athleticism. And we know Monty McNair is going to want to get out and run with his teams. And so Luke Walton and Alvin Gentry will make sure that that team gets out and runs. So I actually like the Tyrese Haliburton pick. Not sure that they had any plans of taking him at one point, but I'm not even sure they planned on taking a guard, but once he was available, I think they had to snatch him up for value reasons. And then, like you mentioned, I like the 2 second-round picks because they kind of fit that Rockets mold that Monty McNair is used to, of guys that are really 3-and-D potential players. If Woodard can carve out a role in a Robert Covington-esque way, he could absolutely fit in that Kings mold. Or in that Kings system, and then Jemias Ramsey, like you said, absolute dog on the defensive end. We'll see what he ends up being as an offensive player, but he may be able to get on the court just based off what he is defensively right now. And still developing offensive game, but right now, the defense is NBA level. So I liked all 3 picks. I'm going to go A minus.
Let's talk about the Los Angeles Clippers. So the Clippers ended up making a trade for Luke Kennard. They also ended up trading future second for Daniel Oturu, so they got into the second round. Because remember, this was a team that was way late in the second round. They actually also ended up making another trade with Brooklyn and flip-flopping spots, and they ended up getting Jay Scrubb at 55. This was a good night for the Clippers. I'm gonna give them a B+. Kennard, I think, is a player. I mean, I like Landry Shamet, but Kennard, I think, gives him a little bit more breakdown ability. And if Lou Williams is gone, I think a player like Kennard may be someone they need. A guy who can shoot to a similar capability of Shamet, but it also gives you more dribble drive penetration. What you may lose in Lou Williams. Or even if Lou Williams stays and Lou Williams is getting older, he didn't look the same in the playoffs. So maybe you need another player who can give you that. So I love that trade. The trade into the second round, they traded with the Knicks. They gave him, the double draft 2023 pick. We'll see what that means. I can't equate that yet because I don't know where that pick is going to be. I think it's the Pistons pick, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless,
second round,
yeah. But nonetheless, Daniel Oturu, yes, and it's a second round pick. But Daniel Oturu, he's a guy I talked about that I think is a little undervalued. He's very turnover prone, but I think he could end up being a really good player. He's got a really good post-up game. He's a great rebounder. He can protect the rim. He's got skills. We got to see if that three-point shot and that stretch ability will work. But I think he's someone that definitely could end up being a good player. I think he went right along his value. And then Jay Scrub, we talked about him before. A guy's a bucket getter, and you got him all the way at 55. This was a guy we're talking about maybe high second round. So I thought the Clippers did a pretty good job considering they came in with 57. You come in 57, and then you end up with Kennard and Oturu and Scrub. It's a pretty good draft.
Yeah, to me, I'm gonna go A for the Los Angeles Clippers. And it's actually surprising me because they came into the draft with what, no picks, and they came into the draft, I believe, with no picks.
Or
and,
57, I think, was the only pick they had.
Yeah, they came in with 57.
Yeah.
We did our war room video. I talked about them getting Ashton Higgins and not much else really they can do. And they turned that into Luke Kennard, Daniel Oturu, and Jay Scrub. I mean, that's an absolute steal. Luke Kennard, like you mentioned it, he's a better player than Landry Shamet. Luke Kennard is a very undervalued player. He was a 15, almost 16-point scorer in Detroit last year. It's been one of the more unheralded scorers in the league the last couple of years, underrated scorers in the league the last couple of years. And I think him playing in with the Clippers is only going to make his job that much easier. He's playing in a team where he actually might have been, their best perimeter scorer. And now he's going to a team where he's playing with Paul George and Kawhi, and now teams aren't keyed in on him. I mean, it'll be a lot easier for Luke Kennard. And then, I mean, Oturu. The only question I have about Oturu is what's the deal with Kabengele, because that was a guy they drafted a couple years ago that really hasn't done much. And whereas, or was it last year? I don't even remember. It's been a long time.
Yeah, pandemic has messed up our timeline.
Yeah,
it was last year.
Yeah, it was last year. Got they drafted last year, ages ago. And who really didn't do much last year. And now you draft Oturu. There's not much overlap. I mean, there's not much, there's a little bit of overlap there in terms of what they do. Not much of a way in which you can play them both. So there's a little bit of a battle there at the backup big spot. But I think Oturu actually has more upside than like Ivica Zubac. And we'll see what happens with Harrell. They may feel like Harrell may not be back because Oturu, very productive player in Minnesota and one of the more underrated players in this draft from a stats perspective. So we'll see what happens with him. And I think Jay Scrub kind of is very similar to Luke Kennard in a lot of ways. So, another lefty shooter that can put the ball on the floor a little bit and really can score the basketball. So I think that'll actually be good for him playing with guys like PG and Kawhi, because he has a lot of upside. He has a lot of talent. He just needs to be in the right system and know how to really play winning basketball, because he's coming from JUCO. He's got to learn how to be able to play on the NBA level, but he's got three really good mentors in Kawhi, PG, and Kennard to really show him how to score the basketball. So and defend at a high level. Really great job by that Clippers front office, and I think Ty Lue and Chauncey Billups and those guys should be very excited.
And lastly, the world champion Los Angeles Lakers, they traded their first round pick days earlier for Dennis Schroeder, so they didn't have any draft picks. They didn't acquire any draft picks during draft night, so not much in terms of the draft. But in terms of this trade, I guess I'm still giving them an A. I'm giving them an A for their draft-esque activities. Dennis Schroeder, man, there's no way I would have thought they could get a point guard that caliber with their assets. I thought there was no way. But they found a team that's in a fire sale. They found a team that's trying to acquire as much assets as possible. And we'll talk about the Thunder and what they did with that pick later on. But yeah, getting a guy like Schroeder, the one thing about the Lakers team that we saw is, if there was anything they were missing, actually, they were missing it for most of the season until the finals. Because Rondo provided that creator, that penetrator that could get to the bucket, or dribble, drive, and penetrate and kick out, or throw the lob to AD. He wasn't always that guy in the regular season and even in the playoffs. But when crunch time came around, playoff Rondo appeared, and he was great. Now, is Schroeder going to play that way when the lights are brightest in the finals or in the playoffs? No, that's yet to be seen. He did not have a good Game 7 with the Thunder, but he had an incredible season. I think he's shown that he's so much improved as a shooter. So the jump shots that Rondo was making that he'll never make again for you, you can trust Schroeder to make those shots. And for a guy who was a bad defender early in his career, he's turned into just a terror on that side of the floor. So now you got Caruso and him as guys picking him up 90 feet. The great move. I loved it. Trading him for 28, do it 100 times in a row. Great job by the Lakers to give him an A.
I'm going to give the Lakers a B on this trade. I don't hate Schroeder. I may have been a little higher the day of the trade, but now post draft, I look at the guys that were available at the point guard spot, and I think it would have been enticing to maybe take a flyer on like Tyrell Terry, for example, and just after seeing what the Heat did with Tyler Hero, we know LeBron has no interest in playing with any young players, so maybe that's a waste of time. But seeing what a guy like Tyler Hero did for the Miami Heat, I think the Lakers may have been a little overzealous in making this deal because there's some good point guard prospects available at that point. Theo Maledon, another guy that they could have made a play on. Obviously, Nico Mannion, we talked about earlier in this video. Dennis Schroeder is much better than all those guys right now. He's a top 15 point guard in the league. I do wonder what is Dennis Schroeder on the Lakers versus what he was on the Thunder and Hawks, because he hasn't played on like a really good team in a while. A team where the ball is not going to be in his hands, a lot of times. So, but also this is going to be a season where LeBron maybe takes a lot of days off. So they're going to need, a really dynamic guard who can make plays along with Anthony Davis if LeBron doesn't play all 72 games. So it makes sense from all those reasons. For all those reasons is why it's not like a bad move. But I'm a little indifferent because the draft nerd in me would have liked to have seen a lot of these young guards playing with LeBron and AD. So I can only give it a B.
Yeah, and I think that, it's a fair point wondering what LeBron's availability and role will be. I think that he needs to stay the point guard, but I don't think he could do what they asked him to do last year, where, again, Rondo, some injuries, some ineffective play, forced LeBron to end up really shouldering a lot of the ball handling, a lot of the playmaking role, because, Caruso he's only a point guard in name, really. He's going to guard the other point guard, but he's just another guy that's just standing in the corner, really, and spot up. He's not really creating for anybody. So I think they needed someone else. And someone who's a little more consistent. So, yes, Schroeder's role will be diminished on this team, but I think he's going to end up having plenty of opportunity because I think that LeBron will actually take a step back in some of those instances where even though those other guys were on the team, he still was kind of being the dominant point guard. Now he has someone else who can do that. So I think that was important. What do you guys think about the Lakers? What do you guys think about all these teams in the Pacific Division? Make sure you guys give your grades in the comment section. Whether you think we were too high, whether you think we were too low. We want to hear from you guys and see what you guys think. Also, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel, New Generation Media. We'll be back with more videos as well. So make sure you stay locked in. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.